just, you can email me, or it's on our website, womenwednesdays.com. Very easy to sign up there.
Great. You have to use the QR code.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Jackie Brown, and my company is Initial Social Media. I help entrepreneurs like you do their marketing and social media madness. Who needs help with that? I want to tell a little bit about what we're going to be doing with Women Wednesday over the summer. We traditionally had stopped having things over the summer. We know everyone does holidays and maybe the kids are out of school, but we're going to do a thing called Women Wednesdays Teach. We're going to have an educational series, a variety of all different things. But we want to hear from you. What do you want to learn about? Is it marketing? Is it Google Docs? Is it Google Drive? Come see me after this. I'll write down your idea, what you want to learn about, and we will incorporate that and then be presenting the schedule in a week or so, okay? So we want to do that for you guys. And then we're very excited about next week. I hope you all have marked your calendar from here to eternity that Wednesday is for Women Wednesdays, right? Good, love it, proud of you. We're doing a thing called Making News, Mass Media. It's celebrating women who tell stories and the advice on making news yourself. Who wants to have a story about them in the local media? Everybody should. Okay, who wants a positive story about them? Every positive, got it. So we're going to have these amazing women here next week, so I definitely want to see all your faces again, and then bring your friends and family. Judy Mandreau will be here. We love Judy, sister girl. You know Judy. Tiffany Hill. Dr. Michelle Mitchum with Tallahassee Women Magazine. Kara Bailey, she's a news anchor at ABC. Margie Menzel, she is a reporter at WFSU. And Tamara Waters, who is the business and economic development reporter at the Democrat. So lots of great information we're going to get. So if you don't toot your own horn, somebody else may do it and they may send the wrong message, right? So come learn next week how to toot your own horn. That would be great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And so we have a wonderful sponsor for this event, and I'd like to bring her over. Julia, if you could come over here.
Yes, of course.
And introduce yourself and tell us about Innovation Park.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Barbara. This is awesome to see where Women Wednesdays has gone. She and I know each other from DOMI. I've been a member since the beginning. It's business incubators and co-working spaces like this that really help build the ecosystem, and Innovation Park is also at a larger scale doing that. I'm stepping in here representing, helping with some of the initiatives. I'm working with Bill Lixon, the director of North Florida Innovation Labs. And one initiative that we're working with, one program that they've been doing for many years now is tech grants. So May 11th, they are having a pitch day for 5 finalists who will present their tech, products or services. And then it's very much like Shark Tank. So we have 5 judges, 2 women representing as well in tech. So for anyone who's interested in tech entrepreneurship, we'd love to have a conversation with you. Christian over here works for Innovation Park, and he also is helping with managing offices and Idea Labs. So if you have any questions along those lines, we're happy to answer. And really, it's an honor to be here. This is awesome. Lara is amazing. And thank you, Barbara, for making this happen. And thank you, DOMI Station, for hosting accessible events like this.
Thank you so much. As you mentioned, too, I was a tech grant winner. I applied to the tech grant, and I won $10,000 there. This was for my first Swellcoin when I was running Shop Tally with Swellcoin. But I highly recommend it. I mean, putting yourself out there and being, looked at and everything, there's a lot of value and power in that. So are we, Tamar? Can we bring you in here to get us started? Let me hand it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Are you excited? If you are watching online, we are so glad you're joining us. Just like every week, right here on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, we are Women Wednesdays. We are a collaborative community of women here to learn, to be seen, and to be empowered together, right? It's just amazing, like she was just saying, what Women Wednesdays has become, right? Truly a movement in the community. I love hearing other women say, yeah, we're becoming a #1 city for women. I'm like, that's right. Did you hear that at Women Wednesdays? So we're just really excited today. We had a conversation During the pandemic, when Women Wednesdays went very virtual, and we produced, I would say, hundreds of online episodes of our speaker series, and we had an awesome conversation with our guest today. You have likely seen her as you walk through the aisles of your bookstore on one of your favorite books. And when I hear Level Up, I don't just think of Sierra, but I also think of Lara Hodgson. So we're so glad to have you today. Barbara, I'm going to go ahead. As you know, I'm always working behind the scenes and in front of the scenes with my husband. He's DJ Rain, and we have a company called CB Media, and we have spent so much time in front of the camera and on the airwaves on FM and podcasts that we now want to pay it forward and provide small media solutions for small businesses on a budget. So whether that's content creation or just doing something like what we're doing today, we would love to help you with that. So I will be going back and forth as I do. But I'm so happy to have you. We are so happy to have you, Lara. Everybody, let's give her a hand as we get started.
I had to think back, how the two of us first became acquainted. And what it was is, you know how I met Lara? She joined our Women Wednesdays Facebook group. She's a Women Wednesdays groupie.
A groupie. I've never been a groupie before. My son would be horrified.
Perfect.
So I just, seeing you on there, and then I looked into your book, and then I got your book, and I read it. It was just so amazing. And I reached out to you, and I really want to compliment you. Because I reached out and said, hey, would you like to be on our Women Wednesdays? And, like Tamara said, you appeared virtually. And it's just such a wonderful conversation and really, really moving. And it really is an honor. And it's really so nice for you to hop on a plane and fly down here to be with us. And I know after we have our discussion today, we're going to pivot over to Jess over there from Midtown Reader, who has your books available for a book signing. So thank you so much, Jess. So let's go ahead and get you started and tell us, tell us about you and what you want to talk about today.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you
You're gonna
this
give me the
over
clicker?
there, give you the clicker, let you
I have the
over
power.
here.
Yes.
And then after Lara gives a presentation, then the Women Wednesdays team is going to hop back up and
Sounds
everybody be thinking of questions.
Sounds
Right,
good.
take it
Yes,
away.
be thinking of questions. So what I thought I would do today is just share some of the lessons learned and some of the lessons that I think I had to reflect on as Stacey and I wrote this book. So just for some background, Stacey and I have been business partners since 2004. We met in 2004 in Leadership Atlanta. And I won't give the whole story away because it's the first chapter of the book, but suffice it to say that we were going through a workshop together and someone asked her what her dream was. And she said she was going to be president of the United States. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be president of the United States. I have to meet this one because women don't say that out loud. And so one thing you should know is, and you'll figure it out pretty quickly, I am very extroverted and Stacey is the opposite. She is very introverted. So about 5 minutes after this, seeing her across the room, we had a break for lunch and I attacked her at the buffet line. I went right up to her and, oh my gosh, we have to meet. And if you hear her tell the story, she's like, who is this over-caffeinated woman that's all in my space? But we were lucky enough to be assigned to the same sort of study group for the year. We spent the year working on really big sort of problems that were bigger than both of us: education, criminal justice, et cetera. And so that started a 18-year business partnership because she was leaving her job to run for office and I was leaving my job to become a mother. And I said, you're the smartest person I've ever met. We should do something together. And she said, well, you're the smartest person I've ever met. We should do something together. And then we said, what should we do? And so we've had 3 companies. I'll share that as we go through the presentation. But what's interesting to me is about 2 years ago, one of my business school classmates, I must have posted something on Facebook congratulating Stacey for an award. And she said, how did I not know you were business partners? And I said, well, how would you know that? I mean, it's not like I have a sign. And she said, have you ever thought of writing a book? And my initial reaction was, oh my God, I do not have time to write a book. Stacey is an incredibly accomplished author. If you haven't read her books, she has them under a number of different names for legal thrillers or under Stacey Abrams. And she also has a pen name, Serena Montgomery.
where she writes incredible romantic suspense novels. And so because she was an accomplished writer, I thought, well, I'm the speaker, she's the writer. And I know she doesn't have time because I'm running a company. She's like saving democracy here. And so we both said no. And my classmate called again and said, I think it's really important for people to hear your story. And so Stacey and I sat down, and there were really two reasons we decided to write a book when we didn't have time to write a book. And I think one of them is that on one hand, coming through the pandemic, more people have started businesses than ever before. And that's awesome. At the same time, we're in an entrepreneurship crisis. Now, you might say to yourself, those two things don't sound like they should go together, but they do. And here's the challenge. A lot of people are starting jobs, not companies, because they're going out on their own and they're putting up a shingle and they're starting their own business. But if we don't give them the tools to create jobs and hire more people, if they want to. Now, some people want to be sort of a sole proprietor, have a lifestyle business, that's fantastic. But if you want to build something that lives long beyond you and you don't have the tools, then shame on us for missing this incredible opportunity. So part of the reason we wanted to write the book is we felt like now more than ever, we've got women, minorities, people who never would have thought to start a company are doing it. In some cases out of necessity, but we have a responsibility to share our lessons learned, give people the tools so that if they want to scale their business, they can. The second thing you'll note is during the pandemic, there was a huge movement of large companies saying, we're going to lean in and we're going to buy more goods and services from women businesses and minority businesses. And that's great, except that as the economy becomes more questionable, they pull back. And all the progress we made when things were great, we have the chance to lose. Because the minute someone's margins are under pressure, that intent of giving the contract to the small business, the woman-owned business, the minority-owned business goes away when the larger competitor can offer lower prices. So we think if we don't lean in now, we could lose all of the progress we made. So that was the first reason we wrote the book. The second reason is really more of kind of a social reason. So as I explained through the lessons, you will come to learn that Stacey and I are incredibly opposite on so many things. We come from different backgrounds, et cetera, and we would say that that is our greatest superpower. And we both get so frustrated to see my child growing up in a world where people say, if you're not with me, you're against me, right? We have to sort of retrench into our tribes. And that is so wrong. And it's going to take away all of the progress we've made. It's going to kill entrepreneurship and innovation because we need differences. And differences aren't obstacles to overcome. They're gifts, but you have to use it that way. So again, because we are an example of that, we thought we owed it to everyone to write this book to share how two very different people who often see things completely opposite use that as a gift. So I'm going to just share some of the lessons that we've learned, and I'll have stories to go with each of them, and then I'm just here to answer questions. So I have a question for you to start. You know, if I'm going to start talking, I get to ask the questions. Who here wants to be a success?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. So y'all are actually better than most adults, because usually when I say that, a few people raise their hand, but I love the adults that kind of go like this because they don't really want the person next to them to know that they raised their hand. But if you ask that question to a group of children, they will stand on a chair and give you both hands, right? And they'll give sound effects too, like ooh, 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 pick me. But here's what's interesting is so much of us are driven towards this idea of success, but I would challenge you to say that if your goal in life is success, you're not thinking big enough. Success is not the big goal because success is finite. It means I won the race. I ran track in college, so I have lots of sports analogies. I won the race. I got the job. I won the project. I won the award. The minute you've accomplished it, you have to set another goal. There's a bigger goal in life. And I think that that is significance. Because significance is infinite. That means I did something that impacted somebody else, that impacted somebody else, that impacted somebody else. And that sounds like semantics, right? Like, oh, that's cute. She found two words that start with S, success and significance. But it's a big difference. And most of us go through school and we're taught the skills to be successful. They're not the same skills to be significant. Because significance requires changing people's reality. Most people don't want to change, right? If you wake up and say, I'm going to change your world today, they will not welcome you. They like their world. And so there are behaviors and tools that you have to use to be significant that none of us are ever taught. Or if we're taught, they're not rewarded. Many of the skills to be significant is the kid in class that's in timeout a lot, right? Not the gold star, right? Yeah. So think about that. If I were to walk into an elementary school class and say, who wants to lead? You will shove your closest friend to be first in line, right? Try it with any kindergarten class. Who wants to lead? There will be a bum rush for the door and people will shove to lead. They don't have a clue where they're going, but they're certain they want to be first, right? If I ask a high school class who wants to lead, people will divert their eyes and will not look at you. What happened? 5 years old to 15 years old. We went from wanting to lead and seeing possibilities, even though we're really clueless, to being led by fear, to being afraid to do something. And I think it's because we've gotten this focus on success as being the end goal. It's not the right goal. If your goal is significance, you would raise your hand, right? You would want to lead. Will you stumble along the way? Absolutely. But if your goal was significance, who cares? Who cares if you stumble as long as you get back up? And so I really love to share. This is a poster, and if you can't see it, that's okay. I'll send these slides out. But I keep this poster in my office, and it's the attributes of those people who made the 10th grade history book. Now, mind you, everybody who made the history book didn't make it for doing good things. You can be significant in a bad way, too. But when you look at the attributes of these people, if you start at the top, they look like things you would get a gold star for, right? But as you start to go down, you see things like bone honest, critical, piss a lot of people off, contrarians, right? These are not things your teacher would have celebrated, but these are the things you need to do if you're really going to change the world. And so this has always been something Stacey and I focus a lot on because, again, when we met each other, the first business we started, we had 5 roles. We had a business called Insomnia. And you'll laugh, people ask why we named it that. We would email each other at 2 a.m. and expect a response because neither one of us can shut our brain off. But we said to ourselves, we're gonna have 5 rules. We are not gonna take a project. We won't work with jerks. We had a much stronger word, but I won't use it since we're live. Life is too short. You've already got challenges in your life. We only work with good people. One of them was we wouldn't take a project if it didn't challenge our head and our heart, which meant it had to be important. We wouldn't take a project if it didn't change the world. It had to be big. We also had one that family comes first, which we are adamant about. And one was that time was optional because we email at 2 a.m. So we had to have that. Sleep was optional. But the one about sort of it's got to change the world, that was important to us. If it wasn't something significant enough worth doing, we weren't going to spend our time on it. And I feel like before Stacey and I met, I really was the type of person that was always trying to please. So if you needed help, I would help you. And it was really working with Stacey that got me to realize that your time is valuable. And one of the things, how many people say this? I say this all the time. Oh, I don't have enough time. Has anyone ever said that? I don't have enough time. So I'm going to challenge you to reframe that. Because when you say, oh, I don't have enough time, think about that sentence. I am the victim, and someone has conspired to steal my time. I don't know which one of you did, but somebody took my time. We all know that's not true. So if you change the sentence to say, I choose not to have time to do X, if that sits well with you, then you prioritized appropriately. If it doesn't, you prioritize poorly. Because the reality is, anytime I feel like I don't have enough time, it's because I chose to spend my time on the wrong thing. I chose to give my time to something that wasn't important. And I have to own that. So it's much easier to just say I don't have enough time because that's somebody else's fault. But if I choose not to have time, that means it's on me. And so this idea of sort of significance and owning where you spend your time is key. When I was growing up, people would always say you should do what you're passionate about. How many people have heard an inspirational speaker say that? Do what you're passionate about. Now, when speakers used to say that, everyone else in the room got really fired up and I got really stressed because I didn't know what I was passionate about. Not that I didn't have anything, I had a lot of things. There are a lot of things I can be passionate about. And that would stress me out. How do I know what I'm passionate about? What I realized is that that is the wrong advice. You do not need to do what you're passionate about. It's the wrong statement. You need to do the so what that you're passionate about. The what shouldn't matter. The impact is what matters. So if you ask yourself, what is my so what? That's what you have to be passionate about. And I'll tell you, it also changes how successful you are at that thing. So for example, if I designed this wonderful clicker, and this is what I'm passionate about, this is my what, I designed this. If you were to come up to me and say, well, Lara, I have an idea to make that better. What do you think I'm doing? I'm sorry, did you see how great my clicker is? Because my ego's in the what, right? This is mine, and you just called my child ugly, right? You just told me it could be better. I'm not listening to you, talk to the ant. If my ego is in making this presentation better, that's my so what, and this is just a tool, and you come up and tell me there's a better way to do it, I'm all ears. Ooh, that's great, let's hear about it. So with my current company now account, which is the third company Stacey and I started, you could walk in and tell me to change anything about what we do and I wouldn't care. Because my so what is that our clients grow their business, create jobs, create generational wealth, and we level the playing field for small and underserved businesses. That's my so what. Nothing about now account is sacred because my ego is in the impact. So do not do what you're passionate about, do the so what. This is the second company that Stacey and I started after Insomnia was called Nourish, and it's because I showed up at one of her campaign meetings. She was running for state legislature. This is way back, her first time running for any office. And I had my child in the carrier, and I came stumbling in late, and my child had spilled everything. So you can imagine how pleasant I was. And I was like, somebody has got to create a spill-proof bottled water for kids. And she looked at me and said, why don't we do that? Now, mind you, neither one of us knew anything about water other than how to spell it. And so we started out just talking to people. How would we go about creating a bottled water? So we designed a spill-proof packaging. We patented it. And I thought back to when I was in high school. If I remember the yearbook, there's always the superlatives. And in that yearbook, I, along with this gentleman, David Bell, was most likely to succeed. And I hate it because it's the dumbest picture I've ever taken in my life. They had us dressed up leaning on a Porsche. It's a really dumb picture. Because I can tell you with great certainty that if I showed you any picture today that I'm proud of, my car isn't in it. What I would probably share is the middle picture, actually, because when Stacey and I launched Nourish, shortly thereafter there was a disaster in Haiti, and we were seeing all these reports of homes being demolished, buildings being demolished, and the first thing we thought is, you can ship gallons of water, and that doesn't help a baby, so we have to ship our water there. And we found a church that was sending planes down, and our customers all came together, and we shipped over 5,000 bottles of water down to Haiti. That's what I'm proud about. That's my so what. So focus on your so what. But how do you know what your so whats are? And people often say, well, how do I know what my so what is? So I'll give you something to think about. People often come to me and ask me to look at their resumes. Most people's resumes are a list of what's. I was the vice president of such and such. That's awesome. What'd you do while you were there? What impact did you have while you were in that role? And if you think about really senior, like a senior sales executive, their resume is a so what, because it'll say, I doubled sales from this to this. That's a so what, that's impact. So I'm always telling young people, when you think about your resume or anything that says what you do, change the what to the so what. The fact that you were vice president of something simply means your butt kept a chair warm for some period of time. What's more important is what happened while you were in that role. What is better because you were there? And if you start to think that way, if you train your mind to think that way, your so what's will become obvious. It's what you care about. It's what you can't go a day without thinking about. People will often say, is your so what something that you like? And what I often laugh at is, it took me midway through my career, starting businesses with Stacey, before I realized that what I was good at and what I liked weren't always the same. And most of us, when we're young, if we show a skill, everybody who loves us, that's around us, encourages us to do it more, right? You're good at bouncing a ball, you should play basketball. You're good at math and science, you should be an engineer, right? And it's well intended, because these are the people that love us and they want us to do what we're good at. But nobody ever stops to ask, is what you're good at and what you like the same thing? Because there are things I'm good at that I don't like. And I'll tell you how to figure it out. It also finally made sense. When I was at Georgia Tech in undergrad, I had a professor that told me I had an engineering mind and a liberal arts personality. I thought that required medication because it doesn't sound good, but he noticed this, that what I was good at and what I liked weren't the same thing. Who keeps to-do lists? I'm a huge to-do list person. In fact, if I do something in the day and it wasn't on the list, you write it on, scratch it off, right? It's like therapeutic. So hopefully your list on Monday is longer than Friday. It'll never be 0 because you're adding to it all the time. Look at your list every Friday for a month. The same things are on it. You don't like them. If your Wednesday lunch cancels and you have an hour of found time, you don't do those things. You do more of what you like. So I'll tell you mine. If I have a free hour in my day, I will call a client, I will call an investor, I will call one of my partners, I will talk to my product team about what we can do that's new. I will not touch a spreadsheet. I won't look at the accounting. I won't do the finance stuff. And I'm an aerospace engineer. I'm really good at spreadsheets. I don't like them. They're not fun. They don't talk to me. And so that was an epiphany for me, is that there are certain tasks that create energy for me. Like I am on fire when I'm doing them. And there are certain tasks that drain me of energy. I'm good at them, but they don't fire me up. If you can figure out what those are, it doesn't mean you don't do the ones you don't like. That's not the way it works. I still have to do the spreadsheets. But what it tells you is when you're building your team, find somebody who chooses to do on Monday what you leave to Friday. Because if everyone leaves it till Friday, it ain't getting done. Because it's easy to roll over to the next week and it'll still be there. So that's how you think about putting your team together. And Stacey and I are opposites. What she absolutely loves to do, I will put off until not just Friday, but I'll put off till next year if I can. And what I love to do, she doesn't want to come within a 10-foot pole of. So it was perfect. That's how we put that partnership together. And so, as I mentioned, our differences are our superpower. And I don't just mean in terms of skill sets. Like a lot of times when you put a team together, and we made this mistake with our second company, we put a group of women together that on paper had all the perfect skills. We had the marketing person and the finance person and the legal person and the product person, and it should have worked great, except it didn't. Because our skill sets worked, but our mindsets didn't. And mindsets matter more than skill sets. There are very few things I can't teach you how to do if I need you to do them. But I can't teach you how to think. I can't teach you how to face a challenge. I can't teach you how to overcome adversity. And that's the part that matters. So what Stacey and I realized is that not only did we need to think about skill sets, but mindsets. And as I mentioned, I'm Irish Catholic from New York. Stacey grew up in coastal Mississippi. There's almost nothing about our background that's the same. And it's awesome. It's awesome because what we believe is if we stay focused on our goal, and our goal is bigger than either of us, if we stay focused on the goal, then our differences are a positive because it allows us to see something from 360 degrees. We can see every angle. Most people at best have 180, but together we can see 360 as long as we stay focused on the goal. The minute you lose sight of the goal, your differences become a weakness because now it's a tug of war. It's my way versus your way versus, well, I thought this and how could you think this? And so one of the things we talk a lot about in the book, we share several examples where we were in a situation and we saw things totally differently. Or there's one example in there, we're in a room, it's a large waste company with a lot of older white men. And at the end of the meeting, Stacey noticed that nobody was asking her questions. And I didn't notice, I was talking too much. And so we talk about our ride back to the airport and she's like, initially I was really upset with you. Like you didn't notice this. And then I thought, well, wait, how is she supposed to notice that? And we had this incredible conversation about how do we prevent that from ever happening again? How do we focus on the goal, focus on the solution? And when you do that, my way is one way, her way is another way, and there's a third way that's better than either of them, if we have the patience to get there. So our biggest mantra, and this is how you make your differences a superpower, is be curious first, critical second. We live by that every day. When somebody says something that you either don't agree with or you don't understand, first be curious, which means ask questions, and ask questions to truly understand, not to defend. Be curious first, then you have all day to be critical. But you can't be critical if you haven't learned something. And so it's that ability that has allowed us to innovate in industries we had no background in. I mean, Stacey and I came into financial services, neither one of us are bankers, and we created a solution that is changing the industry because we were curious. We didn't know enough. We asked really dumb questions. So be curious first, critical second. It's always interesting to me that you can look at the same thing as everyone else and see something different. So these two people are looking at this drawing on the floor. One person says it's a 6 and the other says it's a 9. They're both right. And one of my favorite quotes is, you don't see the world the way it is, you see the world the way you are, right? We all have a lens. It's not a good lens or a bad lens, it's just the lens. It's the lens we grew up with. And so if you can develop the skill to move that lens and see someone else's, that is a superpower, right? Being able to see something from someone else's perspective. The other thing that I think we learned throughout starting these 3 companies was this whole idea of giving ourselves permission. There are a lot of myths around entrepreneurship, and most of them are wrong, but they're propagated by people who benefit from them being propagated. So typically when we talk with groups, as you can imagine, we have a financial technology product. Anytime we're on a panel in the financial services industry, nobody looks like us. And most of the audience doesn't want to talk about finance. I mean, how many people started a business because you have a passion for finance and accounting? Anybody? Anybody start a business because you have a passion for finance and accounting? Unless you started a CPA firm, probably not. That's okay. Give yourself permission to not be an expert, to not know anything about it. And if you do that, if you stop saying, I have to know everything, I have to be the expert, And instead you say, I don't know anything about that, please help me. It is amazing what people will do. I've even been in situations with bankers who, before I even share what we're doing, they're like, well, I already know what you do. I'm like, really? That's awesome. Tell me. Please, teach me. Because usually the person talking is not the person who's learning anything. They're talking too much. And so give yourself permission to not be an expert at everything. That's what other people are for. Give yourself permission to not follow the myths of entrepreneurship. And I think I have them on another slide, but I'm going to go ahead and share it. So some of the myths of entrepreneurship that almost took Stacey and I down. When we had Nourish, we were trying to raise capital. It's an asset-intense business. We went around to Atlanta and talked to all these investors, and you know what everybody said? You're not a high-tech startup. No, it's a beverage company. Well, you can't make money with a beverage company. Now, remember, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. The largest building that I'm standing in the shadows of says Coca-Cola at the top of it. I think you can make money with a beverage company. But this mentality that there is second-class entrepreneurs, that if you don't have the hot, high-tech, whiz-bang product, that you're somehow a second-class entrepreneur is wrong. The fact that you don't raise venture capital, the fact that you're not a unicorn, let's all be honest, unicorns are mythical creatures. They're not real. I don't know why any of us want to be one. So give yourself permission to not follow what everybody says is the way to do it. Because I'll be honest, if we let that myth propagate, if somehow the fact that you're not venture-backed technology company makes you less of an entrepreneur, we wonder why we discourage women and underrepresented founders from ever pursuing entrepreneurship. Mrs. Fields makes cookies. I think you can build a business doing just about anything if you have the passion and the drive for it. Also give yourself permission to not fall into this mindset that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to give up everything else in your life. And mostly women talk about this, but quite frankly, lately I have a lot of men coming to me saying, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I want to have a family. I want to have children. Someone at some point decided to tell people that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to give up everything else, right? You have to give 2,000% to your business. And that's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. It's wrong because if you're willing to give up your family, your children, your spouse, your parents that you care for your business, I would never invest in you. You don't make wise choices. But the reason that myth is propagated is other people did make that bad choice and they want company. Right? Misery loves company. Don't let people tell you that. You don't have to give everything up. I've run multiple businesses and I'm room mom. I've been team mom for every sport. I read to kindergarten classes. You absolutely can do that. And then I would say, you know, the third myth, and Stacey and I laugh at this one, is that entrepreneurs love risk. That's not true. Entrepreneurs do not love risk. Stacey will tell you she loves a good paycheck. When we started our business, I had a new baby in the house. Stacey was caring for her aging parents who had health issues. And so this idea that we were supposed to eat macaroni and cheese or ramen noodles and live in our garage, and what do they say? Entrepreneurs leap off the cliff and design the wings on the way down. Not true. That myth discourages who from being an entrepreneur? Discourages women for sure. Because that may sound good that you love risk, but I have a new baby in the house. Like, people rely on me for life. So we're not just gonna throw caution to the wind and leap off of a cliff. You do not have to love risk. You just have to not be frozen by risk. The way Stacey and I say it, we're happy to leap off the cliff, but we're gonna have studied the ground first, right? We're gonna make sure there's a mat there with some foam so that when we fall, it doesn't hurt. And that's what most entrepreneurs do. So give yourself permission. The other thing about entrepreneurship is what you know versus what you notice. And this is one of my favorite little exercises. I'm gonna send it to you because I want you to do it with your children. On the next slide, I'm gonna give you a series of words and I want you to just read them out loud as a group. and then I'll tell you, and you may have done this before, but your left brain reads words and your right brain reads color. So I want you to just read me the words. Ready? Go. Everybody always does the same. Oh, backup mic. Oh, backup mic. Everybody always does the same cadence. Now I want you to read me the colors that you see. Not the words, but the color I wrote it in. Ready? Go. It's hard. It takes adults like 3 times as long to do that. I will tell you, my father-in-law, who's an industrial engineering professor, he can't finish that without inserting his own 4-letter words that are not understood. Here's what's funny about that. If you ask a 2nd grader to do it, they'll do it in the exact same amount of time. They can read you the colors and the words in the exact same time because their left brain and their right brain are evenly developed. As adults, unless we're lucky enough to be in a really creative industry where we're surrounded by like graphic art or we're a kindergarten teacher, our left side develops more than our right side. So we become much more analytical and our left side reads words. So the words are easy, but because my dominant side knows that the word is yellow, it won't let the spatial side see that I wrote it in red. So what you know dominates what you notice. And that is such a key lesson for entrepreneurship because most great ideas don't come from what you know. And I know that's a really unfortunate truth, especially you should see the look on the faces of a PhD class when I said your best ideas won't come from what you know. They're like, oh my gosh, I just spent all this time knowing a lot of stuff. And that's important, but your innovative ideas come from what you notice, not from what you know. So everyone else knows things, it's what you notice. And what that means is another myth. Give yourself permission to have a great idea in an area you know nothing about. All the time people will say, well, I'm a bioengineer. Well, that's great. That doesn't mean your best idea can't be, in gardening. Notice where you have ideas. Notice where people have problems. Notice where people struggle. That's where your idea is. Stacey and I had no background in water or consumer products, and we started a water business. We had no background in finance, and we started a financial technology company. The best ideas come from the demand side of the problem, not the supply side. So give yourself permission. My other favorite one is this idea of a glass ceiling or a sticky floor. We all know that there are glass ceilings out there. The sad truth is it's not what holds most people back because you don't get far enough to even touch it because the sticky floor holds you back first. And the image I have for that is if you look out a window, luckily you guys have some windows here, and you focus on something in the distance, like a wonderful tree. If you focus really intently on the tree, you don't see the window anymore. But the minute I tell you there's a window there and your eyes refocus, the tree is blurry. The tree was your goal. You'll never get there if you lose sight of it because you're focused on the window that I put in front of you. And so while the glass ceilings are certainly real and there are ways to bust through them and go around them, etc., we'll never know that if we don't get to it because we hold ourselves back with sticky floors. Small businesses are not miniature large businesses. When Stacey and I were trying to grow, initially Insomnia, then Nourish, what we found is everybody gave us the same old solutions. So with Nourish, we had started selling initially into gift shops, baby stores, etc., airport stores like Hudson News. And then about a year into the business, we got our first big order from Whole Foods. I still remember the day I called Stacey. We started to high-five each other. We had bagged the big deal. We were going to be on the cover of Fortune. We had it all planned out. And midway through the air, we started to realize, wait a minute. When we sold to the gift shops, they paid us with credit cards. Credit cards are wonderful. You get paid that day. It's awesome. When we started selling to Whole Foods, we were shipping truckloads, not cases. And there's a lot more zeros on the end of those and no credit card. They said, we want an invoice with net 30 terms. And I was like, So let me get this straight. I'm supposed to buy the materials, make the product, pay the people, ship the product, and you're gonna pay me in 30 days. It's kind of like the old Popeyes cartoon, right? I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. And we thought, well, we don't love it, but it's the quote unquote cost of doing business. So like all good scrappy entrepreneurs, you just cobble everything together, ship the product, and figure it out as you go. We went to our suppliers and said, you know what? If we have to wait 30 days to get paid, would you give us 60? We can do basic math, right? 30 days, 60 days, everybody's happy. Until we realized that net 30 doesn't mean you get paid in 30 days. That's just a suggestion. Like what we really should write on the invoice is net pay me when you feel like it, or net never, net when you get around to it. And we didn't know that. And I still remember the day that I dropped my son at daycare and I sat in the car and I put my head on the steering wheel and I cried. Because we had just spent 2 years of our life, our money, we had gotten this big deal. Whole Foods loved our product. It was flying off the shelves. We're going to put you in 3 more distribution centers. And now we had to turn down orders. Nobody starts a business to turn down orders. And my first thought was, we messed up. Like, oh, how could I have messed up? Then I started thinking, I must have had the flu and missed a finance class. Because I paid a lot of money to go to this MBA program, and we talked a lot about venture capital, but I don't remember talking about the basics of commerce. Like, I give you product, you give me money. That's the way it was supposed to work. And everyone said to us, well, you just have a working capital issue. Everybody has that. You should go get a line of credit at the bank or try factoring, and they were miniaturizing solutions, right? Those solutions are great for Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola would go down to the bank, get a line of credit, securitize this and factor and all these other things, but we couldn't. And what I started thinking was, wait a minute. You just said everyone has this problem. That's the most important part of that sentence, not all the other stuff you listed. If everyone has a problem, the existing solutions can't be very good. What can we do differently? And so since Stacey and I didn't know enough, we took all the existing products and we laid them out on the table. And we started to break them into their pieces. Don't like that part, get rid of it. Don't like that part, get rid of it. And then you end up with pieces. Now we got to figure out what to do with it. And we were sitting at lunch one day and all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. This restaurant never waits to get paid. That is so unfair. Why don't they wait to get paid? I mean, if you walk out of a store without paying, that'll earn you an orange jumpsuit. That's called stealing, right? But in B2B, it's okay to send product and not get paid for months. And what we realized is that the credit card system had changed that. Because when I was a little girl, my parents didn't borrow money from banks. The bank wouldn't lend money to my parents. My parents got their credit from retailers. So every month my dad would get paid and my mother would pay the thrift town bill and she would go pay the Riches bill. And that went away with the credit card system. And so the same thing never happened for B2B. So we decided that your best ideas happen when you lack resources. It's really inconvenient. If you're on my team and you say, I can't do what you asked, I don't have enough, fill in the blank. I don't have enough time, I don't have enough budget, I don't have enough people. My answer is always like, awesome, see what you can come up with. Because if you have unlimited time and unlimited budget and unlimited people, that's easy. You don't have to be creative. Your best ideas happen when you lack resources. And so let's come back. I was on a roll with this other story, but one of the things that we also realized, and I mentioned this earlier, was hire patiently. Anytime we were up against a wall and we needed help, there were always people that wanted to be part of our team, and they were so excited, and we brought them in, and it was awful. Because we were so quick to bring people in. When you do that, you will always hire people that look like you. And when I say look like you, not necessarily physically, but like think like you. And that's why you like them so much. Like, oh, that person's awesome. They remind me of me. You have to be patient to get to know people who don't remind you of you. And that's the best people to put on your team. So we had to really focus on our patience, which neither one of us are good at. That's why the name of our company is Now. We don't do later very well. But what we realized with the story so back to our former programming, what we realized with Nourish is everybody was giving us these solutions that worked for everyone else, but nobody had ever thought differently about it. And I think your challenge is your greatest opportunity. So everyone knows the word pivot. If you watch Friends, you'll remember the episode where Ross yells it over and over, trying to get the couch around the post. The thing that most people don't understand is what pivot means. It's an incredibly overused word, and nobody uses it right. Pivot does not mean change direction. That's what most people think it means. How many people play basketball? Yes. There's a pivot foot, right? What happens with the pivot foot? It's planted. It doesn't move. The definition of a pivot is that you turn around a fixed fulcrum. If you move the pivot foot, that's called traveling, you lose the ball, right? You turn it over. So changing direction is not pivoting. What's important if you want to pivot your business, your life, whatever, is the pivot foot. If you don't know what it is, you're not pivoting. The pivot foot is your true north. It's your DNA. It's what cannot change for you. If you lose sight of that, you are wandering. Not pivoting, you're wandering. Lots of people wander, change direction all the time. You have to have the pivot foot. So spend more time thinking, yes, I want to change direction. What is my pivot foot? What can't change for me to lose, like to keep who I am? What's important to me? We already talked about the urban myths because I did it out of order. The other thing we realized is that you have to fail fast and you have to fail forward. So my two favorite stories, people always say failure's okay. I'm like, no, it's not. When you say failure's okay, that means it's excusable. Failure is awesome. You should absolutely try and fail at something every day. My son hates it when I say that, but I force him. You have to fail at something every day. Sarah Blakely, person in the picture on the right, started Spanx, youngest self-made female billionaire. From Tallahassee, that's right. And so Sarah, when she had first started Spanx, she and I were at dinner with her dad. And her dad told me this story, that every Friday at the dinner table, he would ask Sarah and her brother, what did you fail at this week? If they didn't have an answer, they were punished. Punished. You punished your child for not failing. And he said, absolutely. If you went an entire week and you didn't fail at something, shame on you. You stayed comfortably in the center of your bubble. You couldn't possibly have tried anything new. And so if you fail fast, it doesn't hurt as much. If you try to avoid failure, it will come anyway, and it will be epic. So fail fast and fail forward. And then my other prop that I have here, if I lean, I might fall over. But let's see if we can do this. All right. So before Stacey and I started our first business, I had a footwear company with Shaquille O'Neal called Dunk. This is his shoe. The one thing we know is if this is your shoe, you must have very big luggage. How would you pack, right? I was going to an event one time, and I had this under my arm because it doesn't fit in my roller bag. And this woman said, that is an amazing purse. Very convenient, has a strap, right? But the reason I carry this with me is when we had this footwear company, my husband had come out to LA and we were going to Shaq's house for lunch. And I was so excited to see all the MVP trophies. That was the year he was MVP of the All-Star game, the regular season, and the playoffs. We get to his house and there are no trophies anywhere. Now, when you walk in, there's a game room, and it's not like a game room you or I might have that has pool tables in it. It has like stuffed game, like a cheetah eating an animal. He's got these amazing rooms. He's got pictures of him and Michael Jordan and his friends and Tiger Woods. And I said to him, where are the trophies? And he said, when I was growing up, my dad had a rule. If you won an award or a trophy, you could keep it in your room for 2 weeks, and then it had to go in the basement. Because if you were so focused on celebrating what you did yesterday, you couldn't possibly be focused on what you're doing tomorrow. And I thought, wow. Because my office has diplomas, that's the past. Pictures of vacations, that's the past. Everything in my office was the past. So I challenge people, put something in front of you that's your future. That's what you want to achieve. And then you will be able to fail fast, but also fail forward. I gotta get my clicker back. All right. As we were going through the challenge with Nourish, what we realized is everyone loves to say cash is king, but if cash is king, then flow is queen. And you can't win a chess match without flow. So my cash in your account doesn't help anybody. And so as Stacey and I sat down, what we realized is that in the consumer world, retailers never wait to get paid because you hand them credit cards, right? If I hand you a Visa, you're gonna get paid that day. You didn't borrow money, you didn't factor anything. And when I pay my Visa bill is not your problem, right? If I don't pay my Visa bill, Starbucks doesn't get charged back for that. But in the world of B2B, I would gladly take a card. My customers won't give me a card. They want an invoice. I don't want to send an invoice. So all we said is let's just connect the green dots. Let's let the small business feel like they took a credit card, and let's let the customer feel like they have the old accounts payable. And so we created the first payment system that allows you to get paid immediately in a way that feels like taking a credit card, even though your customer gets the invoice and pays whenever they feel like it. Everybody gets what they want. As I mentioned, people look at Stacey and I and they're like, you are not bankers. How did you come up with this? Bankers are too smart. They know too much. We didn't know enough. We're like, why not connect the dots? And so that's how two women who have no background in finance end up starting a financial service company focused primarily on small and underrepresented businesses. Another myth, balance. This is most women's favorite topic. My husband comments that if you go to a male-dominated conference, they will never talk about work-life balance, by the way. But we talk about it all the time. And we have this debate, can you have it? And I'm going to answer it for you. You can have it. You don't want it, it sucks. It's not the goal. Work-life balance is not the goal. Because balance to me is a seesaw. And if you see two people on a seesaw on a playground and it's balanced, there are two things we know. Number one, nobody is having any fun because you're just dangling. But number two, everything is average. Does anybody here wake up in the morning and say, man, I really want to be an average mother, an average spouse, an average CEO? No. Stop trying to be average. So I changed my goal to optimization. I know it's a big word, but if I can optimize my time and focus on the present, you'd be amazed at what you can do. And it's not balancing. So I'll give you a picture of balance. Balance is, I'm at the playground, my son is going down the slide. He's yelling mom every 3 minutes because he wants me to watch him. I'm pretending to watch him, but I'm texting my office. He goes flying by. I didn't really see him. He knows that, even though I smiled and pretended like, good job. I just spelled half the words in the text wrong, but I feel like I just balanced everything, right? I just multitasked and I am proud of it. The human brain does not multitask. It's like cutting a tomato in 4 quadrants and putting it together. The juice just fell out. If instead, and you all know this, if instead I look at my son and give him undivided attention, in about 10 minutes, he is so done with me, right? Because I gave him everything he needed. And now I can go do the text and I spell out the words right. And so that is the way that when people say, how in the world do you balance being CEO of a large company, but also being room mom and also being team mom? It's because when I'm at my school board meeting, for that hour, I'm all in, not checking my phone, not looking at my texts. I'm all in. You better be prepared because for that hour, you have all of me. When I leave, I'm all gone. Somebody else has all of me. And so that's how you can get more done, is being present. And we are all so busy running around trying to do 50 things at once and thinking we're balancing that we're actually not. And this is my last one, the power of the mirror. So years ago, I happened to meet this woman named Lara Listwood. She wrote a book called Women World Leaders. You can find it on Amazon. It's kind of out of print, but you can get used. Lara Listwood was really interested in how women lead change differently than men. Not how they lead differently, how they lead change. And she was trying to study women CEOs, but there weren't enough women CEOs leading change. So what she found at the time is there were 18 women who had been president or prime minister of their country, elected. So not royalty, they didn't inherit it, they were elected. she decided to interview them. It took her 2 years because Margaret Thatcher wouldn't talk to her until she'd interviewed the other 17. But after she interviewed them all, what she realized is they'd never met. 18 women running countries never thought to get together. There's the G8, there's the United Nations, and so she brought them all together to Boston. I happened to be a student at the time, and I volunteered to host. And I remember sitting at dinner with a woman named Vigdis Finnboganer. Has anybody ever heard of Vigdis Finnboganer? She's the longest sitting female head of any country. She was president of Iceland for almost 20 years. And the story she told is that in Iceland, little boys will come up to her and say, "Can a boy be president?" I thought that was funny. It's like, my goodness, turn on the television. You can see the president of the free world. And she said, but the power of the mirror is exponentially more powerful the closer it is to you. So to a little boy in Iceland, the president of the United States is not real. To a little boy sitting on the sofa, the NBA player, not real. Who's real? The next door neighbor, the person that's playing with him on the court. And so her point was, while you're trying to change the world, remember that the people you're impacting the most are sitting next to you right now. And that is an incredible responsibility. So for all of us, as we're growing our businesses, as we're changing the community, as we're leveling the playing field, we can make these big changes. But sometimes the most important person is the one that's watching you, that's sitting right next to you. Oh, you like that? She's clapping. So I'll just close with kind of where we are now. Somebody was asking me, since the pandemic, how's the business going? If you read the book, you'll hear all the ups, downs. I cry in my car a lot in the book. But everyone in the company calls me Dory from Finding Nemo. I am not directionally challenged, but my mantra is just keep swimming. So everything can be blowing up, just keep swimming. Just keep doing something. And so after all the craziness that was the pandemic, that was the stuff you'll read about in the book, 2022 was 2.5x 2021. We're now 30 people. December 23rd, we closed a $225 million facility with Goldman Sachs as part of their 1 Million Black Women program. So we are specifically focused on moving this capital into the hands of women, and specifically Black women in businesses, to help them grow permanently. Not small, and the word small business is not a permanent status. It's not meant to be a permanent status. And so we are really focused on growing our team and using different ways to help people get paid. Obviously, Stacey and I wrote the book. She is very focused on some big things in the energy space right now. So you'll see some amazing things coming from her. What I love about Stacey, and I told this to her after the election, is you are bigger than any title. She may be the only person I can think of who created that kind of change in the world with no title. Most people need a title to lean on. And so, so she is amazing. I can always talk about Stacey. And then I just wanted to end, this is hot off the press. No one else has ever seen this slide because I created it last night, and I will email it to you. But with our partnership with Goldman Sachs, applications have just come out like yesterday for the fall cohort of this program called Black in Business. And it's primarily for Black women-owned businesses. It's a free 10-week program. You get a $2,000 stipend. Expenses are paid. You go to New York. It is incredible, the resources that they pull together. So I know there's hot links in there, but we'll email this to you so that you guys can be the first ones to apply if that's something that would be interested for you.
That sounds awesome.
I'll leave it at that. That's it. I probably talked way longer than you wanted.
Sorry. We're fabulous. You did great. Let's have another round of applause. Having the opportunity to apply first is a big deal. So
First,
thank you so
be the
much.
first.
Really
We all want to be first. Remember, we want to be first.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to say is, go ahead tomorrow. One of the things when you came and you were with us virtually, one of the things I remember saying is that I just, in reading the book too, I just felt this like exhale, like this like pressure release. Like, so when I was trying to do a tech start up, all the pressures that come with that. It is so stressful. But I really love how a lot of what you have to say is like the real day-to-day emotional things that you feel and go through, because those are the things that really,
Yeah.
are,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and like the point about trying
If you listen to the audiobook, you hear my voice crack because I start to like get emotional while I'm telling the story.
or just feeling like you have to be good at everything as opposed to like, knowing what you're good at, or what with that match you talked about, what you like to do, what you're good at. So, you have some real things to say. I hope everybody gets your book, and I just look forward to staying more and more connected. But I'm curious, does anybody in the audience have questions or things that they want to ask?
I have one question.
Okay.
I'm not black. I'm half Puerto Rican and I'm old. I mean, that's.
So this is a specific program. There's others I'll send you. There's one called 10,000 Small Businesses.
Okay.
Not specifically women. So I will say Goldman Sachs has allocated incredible amounts of money to these programs. And 10,000 Small Business is one. 1 Million Black Women's a different one. But I'll get you links to all of them. They're amazing.
Thank you, I would like that too.
Yes.
I'm Colombian, so.
We're brown, right? We're not black.
I'm just surprised.
Okay.
I'll take all the links.
There you go. There you go.
Is there a question back here?
Yeah.
So you said about taking that leap off the cliff and studying the ground. So when you have an idea, what's the next step for you? How do you start to go about, studying? Is this a great idea? For people that maybe don't have a business background,
Yep.
or even know how to start that research process, how do you not get stuck in that fear of like,
Right.
maybe this is not a viable thing?
Well, so, and it's interesting you asked that because it's counterintuitive. I think, and when we first started Nourish, we didn't tell anybody about it because there's this sort of myth and fear that if you tell people about it, they will steal your idea. I can tell you with great certainty, everybody is really busy. They don't have time to steal your idea. Like people are not wandering around coffee shops looking to steal your idea. And it was actually Sarah Blakely that told me that. Like I was sitting down with her and I was telling her a little bit about Nourish and she was like, why don't you tell people about it? And I said, well, I don't want anybody to steal it. And she was like, Lara, if you don't tell anybody, how can they help you? And so once she said that to me, to your point, I felt like, oh, okay. Here I was walking around getting NDAs on everything and having people sign all this stuff. I mean, Stacey made my husband sign an NDA. She did. But for the first time, we were like, let's just tell people about it. And so when we had this idea for the spill-proof bottled water, I didn't know if anybody would buy that. I talked to one guy and he said, oh, I have a friend that has a water spring in Tennessee. And so we got in the car and we drove to Tennessee. We walked around with our little notebook and we asked a lot of questions like, what does that mean? How do you do that? What does that mean? And then he said, oh, I know a guy who does packaging. And we drove over and saw that person. And I think what was really interesting is when you're a child, asking why is a very natural question. It's like birds, right? Why? As we become adults, we get afraid to ask those questions because this little voice in our head says, well, that's a dumb question. Don't ask it or they'll know you don't know something. But remember, I just said what you know isn't what's important. It's what you notice. And notice is about why, right? And so I think it's ask a lot of questions. The first time I have an idea, the first thing I do is I start asking people, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Not because I want them to say yes or no, good or bad, but to see how they respond. Like, do they say, oh, what if you did this? And then people start adding to it. But the other thing, so when Stacey and I started Nourish, we asked a lot of people. A lot of people said, oh, I'd use that. So then we were at the point like, okay, so then what do we do? This was before 3D printing. That would have been awesome. We kind of duct taped a sort of sample together. And we went and met with this person at Parody Shops and they were like, oh, that's really interesting. We would carry that. So then we were meeting with someone that had come from Coke. And I remember somebody said to me, you can't take that duct tape thing in there. Like you have to look like you're Coke. It's like, now who is that gonna fool? Right? I think sometimes we try so hard to be polished. It's not authentic. And if you pretend to know something and you really didn't, you just missed the opportunity to learn. And so Stacey and I actually did the opposite. What we did, and this was hysterical, we were at the point where we were going to have to actually spend real money. it was really nice asking everybody what they thought. That was free. But we were gonna have to like write a check and make a mold for something. And so we called all the people we'd met, the guy that filled the water bottles, the guy that had the spring, the packaging guy, the people who printed the labels. We called an all-day meeting and they all came together. Now, mind you, all these people had been in the business for like 30, 40 years. They'd never met each other. And we told them, okay, I'm the bottle. Walk me through the process from the minute you mold plastic to the minute this thing hits a shelf.
I love that.
And we started going through it, and I have to tell you, one of the guys started laughing, and I was like, what is so funny? He said, well, there are two very unique experiences we're having today. Number one, I've never been in a room with all these people before because I just knew my part of the process. I didn't know or care about everybody else's. He's like, I've also never been in a meeting where the word nipple was used so many times in the baby bottle. And he was like, he just kept laughing. But he was like, I think that was a very female way of doing things, was to bring everybody together and collaborate. And thank God we did, because I remember the molding guy, or no, it was the guy who ran the filling plant said, your mold doesn't have this rim around the top. If you look at a bottled water, they all have rims. You probably never noticed it. I didn't notice it. And he said, that's what my equipment grabs. When the bottle comes down the assembly line, it's got to grab it. And yours doesn't have it. That would have been a really expensive mistake when all of our bottles would have been falling everywhere. But if he hadn't said something, the guy designing the bottle didn't know that. He's never been in the plant. So ask questions, more than you would know. And then once you've asked a lot of people, have them all come together and feed off each other. And don't be the least smart person in the room.
What I'm also hearing when you talk is do it the way that comes to you instinctively, and don't think of that as a weakness. I think a lot of times we'll go into a new environment and just try to fit in, and how was it done? I'll do it that way. But a lot of what she's saying is don't question that instinct as well.
I think that's true. And people come to me a lot and they'll say, I'm looking for a job. There's this job opening in this industry, but I don't have any experience. And automatically they've decided that's a weakness. And what I always tell people is that's a strength. Don't go in there negotiating from a point of weakness. You have a strength. You have a skill that no one else in that company has or ever will have again. You don't know anything. That's a gift because you're not biased. So like when a new person joins my company, I always say for the next 2 weeks, you have something I can't have, a fresh set of eyes. Once you lose it, you'll never get it back. So for the next 2 weeks, I don't want you to ask me anything. I want you to tell me what you see. And I'll never forget, right when I had my son, there was a local real estate development company in Atlanta. This was before Stacey and I had started our businesses, before we met. And I went to meet the guy and he said, well, I really could use somebody to help me build this company. I knew nothing about real estate other than I had sort of bought a house. That was it. But he was building like hotels and skyscrapers. And that was the greatest gift. I didn't know anything. And so you know what I said to him? I'll make you a deal. Bring me on right now and pay me entry level. And in 6 weeks, you're gonna be begging to pay me more than I would have asked you for to begin with. And it worked. But it's true.
That's great. Yeah, and I think to me, I'm thinking if there's so much stress in starting a business or running a business, all of that sort of stuff. And I think if you can kind of take away these things and give yourself permission and sort of see things a little bit differently, it can take a lot of the pressure off.
And that's where partners come in. I mean, people often say how did Stacey and I kind of find each other as partners? I think most people make mistakes on the extremes. They either find somebody who on paper looks great and you don't know them at all, bad decision, because you don't have any sort of relationship or knowledge of each other's character. The other thing people make the mistake of doing is starting a business with their best friend. I hope you didn't want to keep the friend. And what Stacey and I often say is, we love the fact that we would fall on any sword for each other, right? But our lives don't overlap 100% of the time. So we don't have children at the same school, we don't live next door to each other, we don't go to the same church, and that gives us space to spend a lot of time together, but to go back to our own environment and have our own thoughts. Because if you don't have that and you start to share a brain, that's dangerous. Because now you just believe your own BS, right? You just get yourself going and you create this little echo chamber. But having the ability to be together, put our thoughts together, but go back to our own space allows us to stay individuals. And I think that's so important because we need each other to be individuals. Like when she's stressed out and I can calm her down, that rarely happens. It's usually the other way around. But you know, when I'm in the car with my head on the steering wheel quiet and she can say, Lara, step back. Like I need her to be that, not to be the same as me.
Well, we want to give, because I know many of you are here to also get your book, your copy of Level Up signed. Midtown Reader, we're so glad that you're here with copies. You will be supporting local when you purchase a book today. Thank you, Lara, for thinking of that as you go from city to city.
We always support local small businesses, independent bookstores.
Yes, so here to Midtown Reader, a woman-owned business. here in
Women-owned
Dallas.
business, yes.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna go ahead and close our platform.
Yes, thank you to everyone who joined us online. I saw a few of you comment that you're so glad this is live, and of course it's available right here on the Women Wednesdays Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can go back and watch it again and again. I would also invite you to watch our conversation from, what, about 2 years ago?
No, can you
Can you believe that? It was also a great conversation that you will be taking lots of notes on as well. So thank you for joining us online. We're going to go back to all in-person fun now. And if you can join us in person next time, please do. Everyone else, let's give Lara a round of applause.